All right, welcome back to FedRAMP in 5, where we talk about all things FedRAMP in about 5 minutes. Today I've got Jackson Gorman with me, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's been really hot, and a lot of our CSPs are interested in it. And really, this is government-wide, going on, within agencies as well. And that is the adoption of Phishing Resistant MFA and what's driving it. So to get into that, it's noteworthy that we really haven't had a lot of change since the digital identity guidance came out some time ago. The name change for 863 from e-authentication to digital identity. For a long time, it's been known and documented that telephony, SMS, and PINs via email, all of those things were not really approved for authentication, and as such, MFA providers couldn't include those features in their services. With some exceptions, or at least it had to be a customer responsibility to configure properly what was allowed in their particular tenant. And now we're seeing some change, and it's really being driven by the exploits that have happened lately.
Yeah, there's been quite a few large-scale cyber attacks, high-profile ones. In this space, I think some of the notable ones are perpetrated by the Lapsus ransomware gang, Microsoft, Nvidia, Samsung, and one of the social engineering tactics they use is MFA fatigue or push bombing. And essentially, that spams a target user with those prompts. You know them probably very well. To accept those in some cases, or further exploit IT personnel by soliciting a credential reset, posing as that user. We have a Cyber Safety Review Board article here, which is really helpful to pull together the information from all of these exploited solutions that have been documented over the past decade. And it does a great job in defining phishing resistance and providing that as a methodology. There's an infographic in here towards the back end that goes through it. And I think it's helpful to see sort of how CISA is starting to provide that information to the industry, dating back to, I think, 2023 is when this one was released. And you can see here the mention of FIDO and PKI as that gold standard for phishing resistant MFA. Now,
and that really, calls out a number of authenticators, right, that are susceptible to phishing, and it's a relatively narrow group of authenticators that are phishing resistant, according to this definition. And I know that this report came out really summarizing, a lot of guidance that had come out based on the attacks, based on the executive order, and there's all kinds of references in this guide, but this is a great report that kind of brings it all together in one view. But you can just see here by the chart here, MFA methods and the exploits that they're meant to stop. You really are getting limited when you get up to phishing resistance. It's really just FIDO2 and PKI types.
Yeah, exactly. You check out the CISA phishing resistant fact sheet. I think we have that ready. You get an idea of what is changing. More types of authenticators are vulnerable to phishing attacks, and really the only available solutions are FIDO or FIDO2, WebAuthn, or PKI-based solutions. And this table here is really what a lot of CSPs and agencies are looking at to make those decisions based on specifically the FedRAMP baselines. As you can see here, mobile application push without number matching has been increasingly exploited, right? As we mentioned with the emergence of push bombing. But go ahead, Jason, sorry.
No, this just has really created a lot of tears across the industry, because if you think about it, you've got a large swath of AAL 3 credentials that have been issued that are of these types that now are defined as not phishing resistant, unfortunately. So it really takes the OTP and TOTP kind of off the table for those types.
Yeah, even the number matching and the TOTP, OTP are vulnerable here. So it's not the push bombing in that case, but it's the more complex exploits with protocol exploitation, SIM swap, and then other man-in-the-middle attacks. I think the key question then is, how does it impact CSPs who are pursuing FedRAMP? And we have some good references to go off of. We have the CISA fact sheet here. There's also the GSA Phishing Resistant Authenticator playbook, which is really helpful. It gives more of an agency lens, but it provides great context and background for multi-factor authentication that is phishing resistant. Per the FedRAMP baseline, IA2 and enhancements, phishing resistant MFA is now a firm requirement in Rev 5. So you look at the CISA fact sheet and you say, well, what are our options? FIDO2, WebAuthn, or PKI. And those are often hardware-based solutions that create new challenges. FIDO is the only widely available phishing-resistant authentication mechanism running on top of the WebAuthn protocol. It's supported by major browsers, OSs, smartphones, but it comes with, in some cases, hardware token management or platform authenticator management. PKI based is another option, and it's less widely available to CSPs, but the government has been leveraging PIV and CAT cards for ages, for a long time, and by leveraging that infrastructure, this playbook even comments on that fact that agencies may be surprised that their infrastructure already supports a phishing resistant mechanism. But those limited options, they come with constraints in implementation, such as the authenticator lifecycle management and compliance. Taking a look at the FedRAMP baselines, IA2 is required at low, moderate, and high, which means even if you're a lower moderate system, you do have to have phishing resistant MFA. If you look at IA5, that tells a bit of a different story. Low systems only require XAL level 1. That's identity, authenticator, and federation assurance levels. Moderate requires XAL level 2, and high requires XAL level 3. And if we look at the compliance that it's relating to, it's 863. So phishing resistant MFA is required for all AAL3 systems in NIST 863, but it's only recommended at AAL2 in the current iteration of 863. So as we can see from that, the industry for 863 isn't caught up quite yet with CISA and the industry. FedRAMP selection of IA2 though, and the enhancements, that's what CSP's got to focus on. That's what the system will be audited against. So it's important to weigh those options for an appropriate solution. And really what it comes down to is platform authenticators versus roaming authenticators. A platform authenticator is built into the device, or it's attached in an isolated fashion, such as a trusted platform module in Windows, or a TEE or secure enclave for Android and Apple respectively. And then your roaming authenticators is what you would typically see from a hardware token, a YubiKey, Google Titan, and others that are available on the market today. But really, there's some controversy there. If you look at IA26, which is under the step 2 here in the playbook.
Yeah, I was looking for it.
There's a couple interpretations, right? You have IA26, which requires that one of the factors is provided by a device separate from the system gaining access. Now, while that could mean that a platform authenticator, which we mentioned, is not separate since it's built into the device from a hardware perspective, another interpretation is that that is a separate device. It's not the system itself. It's installed or attached to the motherboard of the computer. Looking at it from a roaming authenticator perspective, see somewhat similar results. You're attaching a hardware token to a USB-A, USB-C port, and well, not all cases, for the most part, it's living with that device. It's going to stay plugged into that device, unless you're using it for multi-device authentication.
I mean, I think it varies by use case. You've certainly got some users that are going to use the portability across devices, and then many others, I think, where it's kind of this situation where it's a nano that's the actual form factor is designed to sort of blend in with the ergonomics of the laptop and never be disturbed or moved, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, as we move forward, less options are not necessarily a good thing. The constraints that are documented in the playbook, as well as seen throughout the industry, is that by moving to hardware-based token technology, there is a lot more burden on users and on administrative personnel for managing and distributing those credentials. Not to say it's ineffective, especially with regard to phishing resistance, but it does create challenges, especially with larger scale organizations that maybe have thousands or tens of thousands of users that these need to be distributed to and managed. So by limiting that, go ahead.
Well, I think the main takeaway, the government needs and certainly the industry needs, with the new constraints and taking away such a wide swath of authenticators now, we need alternatives to just security keys. Passkey, I think, is really the biggest implementation. It's really the only other alternative at this point, which is the platform authenticator, right? They could be implemented, in a way that you basically enroll them with your authentication provider. It puts certificates on your TPM chip, locally on your device that could be unlocked with a biometric. And really, aside from that, the only other viable alternative right now is essentially the YubiKey, which is the roaming authenticator, right? So we're in a situation where, we need, as an industry, that supports a lot of broad use cases. Not everything is going to be adaptable to using the roaming authenticator versus the platform authenticator. So it's a little bit concerning to see this IA26 and this open interpretation in the playbook. They don't really come down on is it okay to use platform authenticators or not. We're certainly hoping that the case law that's established by the three PAOs that are currently looking at Rev 5 packages, that they're going to come down on the side of with the right configuration and the right controls being met, platform authenticators are okay to use. That's certainly something that we're pushing for.
Yeah, and it does come down to that configuration. By leveraging those additional factors, like you had mentioned with biometrics, what you are, as well as the tried and true FedRAMP FIPS 140-2-3 implementations, that is certainly a factor. And it could change your boundary and devices, right? But there has to be some more options. And I think the interpretation of IA26 will have significant impact on those options for implementing phishing resistant MFA moving forward in FedRAMP. More options are definitely better, and we want the industry to be able to meet those phishing resistant requirements without being so limited to a point that they may even be more susceptible to targeted exploitation if that's the only method that you can really go for.
I think it would be really ironic to end up in a situation where the TPM chip and good implementations of passkeys aren't allowed, but in half the scenarios where roaming authenticators use, like what we're showing, that roaming authenticator stays with the device, just like the platform authenticator would. It would be ironic and discouraging, I think, super discouraging. But it's important also to note that I think that the industry is really taking notice. Okta just released some news about the FastPass, their implementation of Passkey, which is called Okta FastPass, being looked at. I think that they had a third party do some analysis on it, and I know that they're looking at incorporating it into their federal ATOs. So that's certainly a good thing that they're taking this up as well.
For sure. And for the viewers watching, let us know if you're struggling with implementing phishing resistant MFA, and you want to talk about your options in more detail. Check out our recent blog on phishing resistant MFA. We have what's going on with it, and we'll have an upcoming blog that goes into a little bit more detail on some of what we have discussed today.
Yep. Let us know how we can help. Thank you.
Thanks.